Welcome everybody to this extension chat number 3, which is all about supporting change, which, as we know, is the holy grail of extension. So today with me, I've got Denise Bewsell, who is an amazing woman. I'm sure lots of you will know her. Denise is with the Red Meat Profit Partnership, or the RMPP, based in Christchurch. And we've also got some very special guests joining us from Beef and Lamb New Zealand. So we've got Olivia Ross and Laura Lake. And Olivia and Laura are extension managers with Beef and Lamb New Zealand. Both based in the South Island and slightly different areas, but they are going to talk to us about some of the stuff that they're doing to support change with their farmers. So just before we get started, we've got a few little admin-y things. Oh, so these beautiful pictures of all of us. What are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about what's in the toolbox. So it's really important when we're thinking about extension to recognise what are the tools and techniques that we've got available to us. We're going to get Laura and Olivia to share some of the things that they're doing in their extension work, and then we're going to have a breakout room to discuss that. So what we really want today is for you guys to talk and share and learn from each other, but we also want to cherry pick the awesome stuff, the awesome ideas that you've got that we could steal and make our own work better. And then Denise and I are going to share some of the things that we're doing, and we're going to discuss those as well. Now, we did ask you in the pre-work email to tell us what burning questions you had about supporting change. And so we've kind of grouped some of those and come up with, I think, 4 or 5 that we will definitely address if we've got time at the end. But we'll see kind of how things go as we move through. So before we get into the meaty stuff, I want to just remind you of some Zoom etiquette. So works really well if everybody can keep themselves on mute while we're in this main session, just because if there's background noise and chats going on if you're in an open plan office, like I am not today, which is unusual. Nice if you're on mute. It's up to you if you leave your video on or off. It's nice to see people, but if you want to turn it off, that's totally fine. If you've got questions, feel free to pop those through in the chat box. And if you're having technical issues, we've got an amazing technical team supporting us today. So anybody in the participants list that has got tech in front of their name, they can help you. So if our tech team can just give us a wave, we'll see who you are. Thanks, guys. So you can either chat privately to one of those guys or just put help in the chat box and one of them will come and assist you. We are going to record the session today and we'll send out the recording along with the slides from the presentations today and things that come through the chat. Because I know from the previous sessions there's been some real gems that have come out of the discussions that have happened in the breakout rooms. So we want to capture that stuff and make sure that we don't lose any of that richness. What else? Very important. Can you please grab your phone or a tablet or just open up another browser in your internet browser, another window. And what I want you to do is either scan that QR code or just head in your browser to slido.com. So we're going to use Slido as a tool to collect up the ideas that you come up with and your feedback and do some quick polls. So once you're in there, it'll ask you for a code, and that code for today is chat. So if you pop that in, and then it'll ask you, where in the world are you joining from today? Oh, yes. So you'll start to see those results pop through. We've got people from all over the place, which is really exciting. I think we had about 260 registrations for today's session. Lots of very interesting looking places, which is fantastic. Awesome. Okay, so just another 5 seconds on that one. And then I'm going to, so Kellen, who's one of our lovely tech people, also popped the instructions in the chat. So before we go into breakout rooms and things, he's going to do that for us so that we've got those instructions there and they will follow you so that if you need help, you'll be able to get it there. Okay, so I'm going to change questions now, and I'm going to ask you, how many years experience do you have in extension? So I know there'll be some of you who don't do extension, but it's really useful for us to know kind of how long you've been doing it for, if it's something that you're doing. So lots of really experienced people in the room. Interesting. And quite a few really new people as well, which is awesome. We love having you along. Fantastic. Okay. Now, what we are going to do next is head into some breakout rooms. So what we want to do is give you guys an opportunity to meet a few people, introduce yourselves, and what I'd like you to do is share who you are, where you're from, what industry you're working in, and then if you had an extension superpower, what would it be? So I'm going to share mine with you. It is, if there is a saboteur in the room, I would like to be able to click my fingers and their lips would glue together so they can't disrupt what's going on. So that's my extension superpower. So in Slido, what you will see is that there's going to be an ideas tab. So you've got polls and ideas, and in the ideas tab, you'll be able to put in there your extension superpower. So in your breakout rooms, what I want you to do is spend about 5 minutes, have a chat, meet some people, and then we'll be fascinated to see what those superpowers are when you come back. Awesome. Off you go. Some of them I think could be, but some fantastic ideas in here. These are definitely ones we're going to share. Never getting nervous. Clap my hands to gain confidence in the message I'm trying to deliver. Whew. Read minds, very useful, although sometimes I think that might not be a great idea. And have people leave their ego at the door. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I'm going to stop that, and I'm going to hand over to Denise now, who's going to take us through our first kind of presenty bit. She's going to talk about some of the background in supporting change. Denise.
Thanks, Chrissy. Find my unmute button. It's great to have you all on board. Thanks for joining us today. It is really, really cool. And I want to say a huge thanks to Chrissy and Laura and Olivia. Chrissy, because you really just signed up to be the facilitator for this session, not so much the presenter as well, but Chrissy has graciously agreed to be part of it. And Laura and Olivia, thank you so much for joining me, helping me out and make this session a little bit more interesting so it's not just me. And thank you to all of you who sent in a burning question about supporting change. We've really tried to cover these over the session, but Chrissy mentioned we'll be just adding a few more in at the end because there was some great questions that came through. This is just a word cloud of some of the words that stood out. So yeah, hopefully we cover most of them as we go through. So we're talking about supporting change, and we're talking about this in the context of extension. And back at ExtensionChat 1 a couple of weeks ago, John put up this awesome definition of extension, which is extension is the process of enabling change in individuals, communities, and industries involved in agriculture or involved with agriculture and natural resource management. So supporting change is at the heart of extension. It's why we do what we do. And so what we're focusing on today is, given we're working in extension and hopefully we know the change we're trying to facilitate amongst our audience, the question really then is, what's in the toolbox to help us actually support change? That's the how-to. How do we actually do extension? So that's what I want to give you a little bit of background on today, and you'll hear some examples of that basically. Spoilers, sweetie, no one thing will actually do it. So it's always a combination. So just want to put that right up front. So where do we start? Well, there is a whole range of resources out there in terms of how to do extension. So I thought I'd highlight some of those as I go, and some of the questions that I think are important to ask yourself as you also think about this. So there's a whole range of ways, so many ways that you can actually do extension. And this list doesn't even cover everything because wait, there's more in the toolbox. Lots of things, everything from peer-to-peer learning through to using billboards to support change. It's a thing, you know, it could be the next big thing, an extension. And I'm not sure about you, but maybe you're saying, well, that's all really very well, but how do I decide which combination of these is actually best for the audience that I'm working with? Like, how do I choose? So this list on those two slides actually comes from some research that Red Meat Profit Partnership, RMPP, the program that I've been involved in over the last few years. It comes from some work that RMPP did a while ago, back in 2014. And it was made into this little website, redmeatextension.co.nz. And this is just a little tool that you can use to explore just what would be useful for your particular extension project and the audience that you're working with. Now, as with most tools, it isn't so much that the tool is going to deliver the exact mix of activities combination that you should do, but it's the discussion that you have when you're working through the tool that prompts your thinking and ideas. It maybe helps you check your methods. Maybe you realize, oh, there's something else that I hadn't thought about, or the combination of things that you hadn't thought about it. So you can use it as part of your planning or as a way of checking that you haven't overlooked something. And if you would like a little bit more background to this tool, you can actually find the full report that's behind it online, and those links will be available in the slide. And if you aren't into huge reports, because that is quite a big report, there is also a short paper available in the Grasslands Journal, and that gives a really nice little summary of the background to that Red Meat extension tool. And for those of you who are in Australia going, oh, come on, why do I have to look at research done in New Zealand, really? Well, actually, it's pretty similar to this paper that Jeff Coots, Peter Long and Roy Murray Pryor wrote back in January 2017, looking at extension approaches and methods. So you've got some options for reading a little bit more about this, and there's a link to that as well. There is another really good New Zealand resource available called Over the Fence, and it's a booklet from the Ministry of Primary Industries that covers developing an extension program, and it's got a whole variety of tips and ideas and practical examples. So yeah, so that means there's a few different ways that you can work through the mix of tools that you can use and what's best for your situation. Now, again, I know if you're like me, probably some of you are still going, well, that's all really very well, Denise, but how do I even know what tools might work with the audience that I'm working with? And I think that's a really great question to be asking and thinking about. And I don't think the answer is actually rocket science, but the easiest way of finding out about what tool will work with your audience, your target audience, is to ask them and then listen to the answer. And some of you are already doing this. And there's, you know, for example, there's been some really nice work done up in Queensland with sugarcane growers, where that's what happened. You've asked using some great research, and you can find that the answers in the Rural Extension and Innovation Systems Journal, the APEN journal, and there's links to that particular paper online. And there's heaps of great work in the journal. This is another example that I pulled out from a recent edition of the journal. This is looking at record keeping. And I thought this was a nice relevant bit of research, because a few of you had some burning questions about how to encourage change when people don't necessarily see the benefits of change. And I think record keeping very, firmly falls into this kind of category. And so research like this gives us a bit of an insight into what might help from an audience that might be similar to our target audience. So, it's worth having a read of these things. And you might have guessed this is an actual shameless plug for the APEN journal. The journal is available on the APEN website. The papers aren't long, they're 10 pages or less, and you can reap the benefits of what the work that other people have done. So it's a win-win. So yeah, have a read, have a look at what's in there. If all else fails and you really don't have time or resources to be able to spend listening to your audience or finding out like lots of details, then I suggest you have a look through this paper by David Pannell and co, which gives you like a really good background understanding of change and why some farmers will or won't change. And again, spoilers, it comes down to whether the change you're proposing fits with farmers' goals and aspirations. And if the change you're trying to support does fit and align with their goals, then your extension program is going to succeed beyond your wildest dreams. If they don't align, then it's not that maybe it won't work, but it will take a bit more time and effort. David Pannell and co also highlight 2 characteristics of practices or innovations that are important if you're wanting to see change. And those are relative advantage and how trialable things are. And so relative advantage is how superior the new thing is to the old one, the one that it's superseding. And trialable obviously is how easy is this to test and learn about prior to adopting it and using it. So if the changes you're focused on with your target audience don't provide an advantage or aren't trialable or very easily trialable, then hey, you're actually in the right profession, because extension can help with some of those things. Maybe you could use a demonstration farm or a demonstration plot, so they don't have to trial it. But they could see how that new practice or innovation goes. You just have to make sure that, of course, that it's in a place that your audience can relate to and is similar to their context. Otherwise, you'll end up with a whole lot of different problems. Maybe, though, it's about providing information in a whole range of ways that highlights the advantages that they may not have seen for themselves. So this is all stuff that you can do as an extension person to help support change. So getting towards the end of my little bit of background, the other question that's worth asking yourself is, where are the gaps? In the program that I've been involved in over the last few years, RMPP, we looked at what was already out there in the sheep and beef sector. And we've used this diagram as a bit of a way of kind of thinking about it. So this shows a different way of classifying the methods that are out there. How do you do extension, from mass media through to large events, mid-size events, small groups, and one-on-one. And when we were doing our researching and we were designing our extension work within RMPP, what we realized was there is actually a gap in the small group space. So our extension project was basically focusing on plugging that gap. We didn't have to really, do the other things, although we did do a bit of mass media marketing, and we did do some large events and mid-sized events to try and get people interested in the small groups and get people on board. But we really didn't have to replicate anything that was already going on in those spaces. So we filled the gap, and that became Action Network and Action Groups. So yeah. That was a good question to ask ourselves. And if you are interested in learning a bit more about that small group space, we have developed an e-learning module around small group learning that supports taking action on farm. And this is available on the Beef and Lamb website in the Knowledge Hub. So yeah, hopefully you can learn a bit from our work if you're thinking of using the small group approach. So that's just a bit of background. I think I've probably taken up enough time there, hopefully given you a few pointers around the gaps, asking what what tools work for your audience, finding out a bit more about them. If we're actually physically face to face, I would reward you at this point with some chocolate. And I didn't know whether you were a dark chocolate fan like me or a milk chocolate fan, or maybe you liked the idea of having some options, some individually wrapped options. So here's your virtual chocolate. And Chrissy, I am going to stop at that point and hand back to you.
If only it was real chocolate, Denise, you would have me. Thank you very much. That was awesome. And we're going to hear a little bit more about the Action Network later on. But we first are going to hear from Laura and Olivia about what they're doing to support their farmers. And Laura and Olivia, over to you.
Awesome, thanks Chrissy. I'll just get a screen shared here. Oh, come on. Awesome. Cool, thanks everybody, and thanks Chrissy and Denise. So as discussed, we're going to talk about supporting change, and we're going to share with you some examples on how we as extension managers with Beef and Lamb New Zealand support the constant change required across the sheep and beef sector of New Zealand. So based on UMR research and a farmer need analysis, which was undertaken in May 2019, there are three main methods of extension to support farmers that really stood out. And they were demonstrating, so really getting into their on-farm practices and seeing them at work. They're really hands-on approach. So that's something that we're all probably familiar with. That's workshops and field days, and something that's still really popular. And then there's the support around that. And that support is like small discussion groups. You might have small group sessions, like Denise just spoke about with the Action Network. And then there's mentors and advisors and consultants and where that comes in. So our rural professional network. And on top of that, we want the research over the years has showed that complementing the physical with support levers helps that change happen. So that could be the likes of podcasts or hosting information on a website, or it could also be using social media channels like we do. Extension managers across New Zealand run their own Facebook pages, which enables engagement at an individual level and sharing information in a different manner. So, what we want to talk to you about now is the touch points. Events are traditionally extension method, but we know that everyone learns differently. Everyone learns at different speeds and with differing levels of confidence. And as this picture explains, traditional events are only one piece of that extension puzzle. As extension managers, we need to have access to many extension channels to help us enable change on farm. We use these puzzle pieces as what we call touch points. And going off the past research, we try to hit at least 7 different pieces in order to increase confidence that will lead to change. We all know that the more we hear something, the more we start asking our own questions or believing it. I recently read on LinkedIn that it's not nagging, it's repetition is effective communication. So we must be onto something. So let's take you through an example of what we're doing at present involving farmers and sharing information. At present, that's around New Zealand's latest freshwater policies, which are going to affect farmers and getting that information to them. So these are the 7 touch points that we've chosen. And let's go into them a little bit more. Why have we chosen 7? If we go back to in the marketing world, you may have heard the term marketing, the rule of 7, which states that the prospect needs to hear the advertiser's message at least 7 times before they'll take action or buy the product or service. It's the same with information uptake and understanding. This rule actually dates back to the 1930s when it was first used in the movie industry. So there's a fun fact for the day. So to ensure farmers in New Zealand at present understand the new rules that have been put to them in regards to policy, we look at these 7 touch points. So let's go through them. With events, this can be physical attendance, and it's usually field days, or workshops, or a cinema. They come together, There's usually a cuppa or a refreshment involved. They get to be face to face and really chew the fat, like they would at the pub as well. We also have audio. So those same messages being delivered over the likes of a podcast. Or we also get onto the radio and do radio interviews to be able to engage with them in another manner while they're going about their day-to-day work. The great thing with podcasts is they're able to do it while they're doing other jobs and get that information in another manner. Visual. Visual, we can do things like webinars, like we're doing right now, doing them live where you can actually interact and having them available later for them to view. Beef and Lamb has a YouTube channel where these are stored. With the recently Beef and Lamb's Essential Fresh Water Rules, we hosted a webinar and then we put it up on the YouTube channel. This is a great way for farmers to be able to go back and view the likes of that and other videos at the same time. And then as you've already seen, there's QR codes where they can get that link to that visual information. Media, there's so many different types of media out there. And when I talk media, I'm talking newspaper articles, ads in the newspapers, stuff that's coming through the mailbox in a physical manner, columns written and personalizing, really connecting with those farmers. Our next method is digital, very similar to media, but obviously through a digital panel. That can be physical emails, like you can see here. We put out a weekly e-diary every Friday into a farmer's inbox with all information that they need to know. That can also be an email that's just targeted directly to them on a specific topic for a specific region, or it could be Facebook. Also, that website comes into that digital medium. We also, and with the reception getting better across New Zealand, we use texts, and being able to send information out to farmers via text has been really good. Everybody's busy in their day-to-day lives, but getting that little reminder, it might be, there's a submission, you need your application in by Friday, you give them that little reminder to have a look at it at lunchtime when they go in. Then we have print. So that, in this instance, is like a fact sheet where we summarize the big plan down to 6 really farmer user-friendly and farmer language to be able for them to understand the new rules. This could also be in the likes of a mail out, where that actually physically turns up in their mailbox. And we all know what things that turn up in the mailbox. They sit on the table, they end up on the fridge, they're around the house for days, so you're getting in touch with them more than once. And then it leads back into what Denise has already covered, the smaller groups, the action networks, where they can get subject matter experts in to talk to a smaller group and have those one-on-one discussions. Because everything for rules in particular can be different for every region. That goes for discussion groups as well. So I hope that gives you a few more ideas in regards to extension ideas that you could potentially use in your businesses too. And I'm sure that we've missed some that you guys use that we don't, and you'll get a chance to be able to talk about them soon. But now I'm going to hand over to Laura on how we go about creating new audiences. Over to you, Laura.
Thank you very much, Olivia. So I'm Laura Lake, and I'm going to talk to you about how at Beef and Lamb New Zealand, we tried to target an audience that we were not fully engaged with. So here with Beef and Lamb, we were more seasoned at engaging with levy payers who are farm owners, managers, leaseholders, etc. And with a targeted specific bit of information, just as Olivia described. However, we were missing the connection with the up-and-coming young farmers that will one day fit into this category. So we've got much to offer them in the way of knowledge and education, so we were trying to find a way on how to engage them. So a fellow colleague floated the idea of using a social media platform. This platform is fun and engaging, isn't too heavy, and it is a way to draw in this younger crowd due to them already being active on this platform. So I'm going to, if you can all start thinking about what the social media platform could be, I would like you to take out your phones again and open up your cameras. So if you could please place your camera in front of the QR code, you've just done this earlier with Slido, a notification will pop up on the top or the bottom, depending what your phone is, and if you could please click that notification. as you see, we are trying to do extension through Instagram. And please note the emphasis on extension, not communication. So our page is quite different to our main beef and lamb page run by the communications team. And this is how we are trying to do it. So we're not targeting specific information, just like we described before, just trying to capture an unengaged audience, or an audience that's not as engaged. And we're trying to do this by an eye candy photo, something authentic from our staff, family, friends on the ground. Us on the ground are taking it as we're going around our daily farm lives from our work phones, our iPhones, and it's not a professional photo. We're using short bite-sized information that is seasonal to the farming calendar and is relevant for our extension topics. This information is fun and will attract the younger audience. So nothing too heavy, so not a lot of policy in it. We're using emojis as much as possible, trying to bring in a bit more colour, and we're referencing our website or the resources so people can go looking for more information if they want. As you can see, we've also got a lot of hashtags there, and so the more hashtags gets your post out to more pages as possible. It's important to note for this Instagram page, we're following the saves. And so the saves is the little bookmark on the right there. So we believe people who are saving posts are coming back to this information later. So once you save a post, it stores in your Instagram and you can access it easily at a later date. Whereas the likes, which is the we love heart there, is more people liking the photo. And so the reason we're following the saves is we believe that means that people are wanting to know that information, they're going back to it, and they're bringing it up with their employers, friends, and family. So this is our first year running this type of platform for extension. And at the end of this year, we'll be running some analytics against it to see how we're performing for extension engagements and trying to see if any of our followers are coming to events or engaging in any other forms of extension. So keep an eye on us, keep an eye on this page, and we're happy for any feedback going forward if you see anything or have any improvements. So now we are going into the next breakout room. So within this breakout room, there's two items we would like you to discuss. And so what extension method do you find successful? And how could you engage an untapped audience? Within your breakout room, if you could please nominate a scribe, that's actually quite important to record the key points in the discussion. I've probably marked up what was open up on your phone, so someone might have to go back and dig around and find the Slido page, but please record that, it's pretty important. Thank you.
So in the kiwifruit industry, we're kind of lucky. We have got a single desk structure. So that means that basically if growers want to export their kiwifruit, they have to do it through Zespri, which means that we can, everybody's kind of working on the same team. There's not the competition that we see in some other industries. So, you know, that's pretty unique and makes things relatively simple for us when it comes to extension activities. We do have some challenges though. So if we think about kind of connecting up to our target audience, we have got.
Thank you. Can I give you a call back? I'm just doing a training.
We have got Zespri as one organisation, and that's where my team sits. And we've got about 3,000 kiwifruit growers out there. And they grow green, gold, red kiwifruit, sometimes a mixture. And so we have a direct relationship with those guys in terms of a financial relationship. But in the middle, we've got post-harvest facilities. So, you know, some of the people on this call, so Sonia and Gary, they work for pack houses. So they will pack and cool store growers' fruit, sometimes for up to sort of 6 or 9 months. And we've got some other stakeholders in there. So people like retailers and consultants, those sorts of things. And they also have relationships with growers, often closer relationships because they are dealing with just a small portion of those 3,000. And we've also got relationships with those stakeholders. So we've kind of in the last 6 months changed our approach a little bit so that rather than us going directly to growers, we focus much more on supporting those other stakeholders who are also doing extension. Basically so that we're not kind of duplicating effort. So a group that for us has become really important is what we're calling the Tech Forum. So this is a group that was born out of a biosecurity incursion about 10 years ago, and it's really changed and evolved since then. And so what we ask each sort of organisation to do is nominate 1 or 2 people who are involved in extension or in kind of giving technical advice to their growers. They're not always extension staff, but they often are the people that are running field days, or they'll be the kind of technical expert or writing the grower newsletter. People that growers are really going to for advice, and they're often those key kind of nodes in the industry. And we get them together on a semi-regular basis to talk about ideas and you know, new technology or changes to the rules or all sorts of different things. Bounce ideas off them. We'll often use them as kind of a test audience for you know, events or you know, a practice run for a webinar on a different technology, for example, and get their feedback, because they often will ask the questions that growers are asking, so that we can make sure we're really including that important stuff, giving them advance notice of what's happening, so that hopefully, rather than kind of conflicting in terms of offering the similar sorts of things to growers and competing for their attendance or their attention, instead we're really complementing and collaborating to make sure that what we're delivering is the best that you know, that's out there to support growers. So, you know, it's just a relatively new approach, and it's still a little bit sort of uncomfortable, and we're just sort of finding our way, but it'll be really exciting, I think, over the next 12 months to see where we get to. And I think we can learn a lot from the sorts of things that Denise is doing. So I'm going to hand over to her now to talk about the Action Network and how they are approaching a similar sort of thing. So Denise.
Awesome. Thank you, Chrissy. There's been a few comments there about red kiwi fruit. Yum, red kiwi fruit.
They're pretty delicious.
Absolutely. Have had the chance to try them. They're good. If you haven't had the chance, try them. So small group based extension we felt was a way to go, filling a gap. We developed Action Network, and we called it a network because it wasn't just about supporting change amongst farmers, but we also needed to support rural professionals. And we developed this extension model as a way of identifying the things that needed to happen and the roles that we needed to support change. So briefly, at the heart of the extension model is the farm team, and the team is important rather than just thinking about the farmer. And because it's the farm team that can support change when you're not there. In our case, we were getting small groups of farm teams together, and we wanted groups to have activities at the top of that triangle, access to information and resources at the left of the triangle, and then adoption support or follow-up at the right of the triangle, and as a model for how a small group would operate with those 3 things. And then we identified some different roles that were important to get this happening. So at the top right, you've got a connector role. They're connecting farm teams together into groups, and then helping groups and farm businesses connect with information and resources. The facilitator at the bottom left works with the group to determine what they're focused on and the changes that they want to aim for as a group, as individuals in the group. Experts at the top left are brought in to top up information and top up knowledge within the group as required. And then mentors at the bottom right help support on-farm change through mentoring, you know, farm team members, a group, whatever is needed there. And so it really helped us thinking through this, because we realized that this was true of the farm team being at the center, but it was also true if we put rural professionals in the center of this as well. And so as part of Action Network, what we did was we designed a training and support program for rural professionals who wanted to get involved in action groups in whatever role that, you know, they might want to take, so that they, yeah, and we basically put that triangle around rural professionals. We made the training mandatory for facilitators of action groups, but anyone who wanted to be involved in any of these roles was encouraged to go on the training, basically. Now, just to give you a bit of an overview of the training, so we came up with a role description starting on the left-hand side for facilitators so that they had an idea of what was involved and the skills needed. We ran the 2 courses, the lead facilitator course and the Action Network Fundamentals and Extension Design course. Those were the 2 that were mandatory for facilitators. But, you know, connectors, experts came along to those courses as well, because it was all about developing skills for supporting change. What we did was then set up observations for facilitators, and observations was just like a coaching opportunity to help them do as well as they could with the small group they were working with. And then we tried to do some more follow-up. If you kind of move to the row of bubbles there, we provided facilitator toolkits, knowledge, information and resources through the Beef and Lamb Knowledge Hub. Extension managers like Laura and Olivia and their colleague here in the South Island Briar were involved as well, because they're out in the regions. And then, you know, a rural professional directory, a subject matter list, so that they could actually find out who was in their area and get the right person along to their small group. We also started running some facilitator hub meetings. So these are regional meetings, and that was really designed to try and get some a network going in particular regions so that they could support each other. So we were really trying to walk the talk around supporting, and we certainly haven't got it all right. There's heaps more that we could do. There were still gaps and things that we should have done more of, things like that. But what we realized was that supporting rural professionals who were involved in our extension program helped support change. And just looking quickly at the chat box too, absolutely people could play more than one role. So a connector may start out connecting a group but then move to be a facilitator, or maybe a connector might start out connecting a group and move to be an expert that tops up knowledge within the group. So yeah, though you think of them as roles, not people necessarily. Yeah, so Chrissy and I have just tried to give you a little a couple of examples of supporting change, but focused on that rural professional space, advisors, whatever you want to call them, because we're talking a wide range of people there. But the people who in turn support farmers who, you know, are actually making the change. So now we want to send you into another breakout session to talk about what you've heard from us. What did you like? What didn't you like? What would you do differently? You've got 10 minutes in your breakout room, so take the time to introduce yourselves, appoint a scribe and a facilitator, and remember I want to say subscription all the time, Chrissy, but anyway, remember the scribe will need to put their ideas into Slido. So yeah, you've got 10 minutes to have another quick chat about supporting change in a slightly different way.
Welcome back, everybody. Hopefully some more amazing discussions happening. I know there was some really great stuff coming through on Slido. Some cool ideas and really great questions. So we will consolidate all of this up and send it out to you along with the slides and the recording, because I think there's some cool stuff coming out. Okay, we'll just wait for everybody to come back. And still a few more popping in. No, that might be everyone. Okay, awesome. Right now, this is where we start to answer a few of those burning questions that you guys sent to us. Hopefully we've covered off lots of them in what we've talked about already today, and hopefully you've had some addressed in your breakout groups as well. But the first one, I'm just going to share my screen again, is, this was a little bit depressing when we saw this. Is it a futile endeavour? Are we all just wasting our time? Denise?
Yeah, but I thought this was a good question, because I don't know, for other people working in supporting change, we've all been here and going, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? This isn't working. Oh no, you know, I've got it all wrong. And so I thought it was a good question to kind of have out there and say that absolutely it is not a futile endeavor, but when you're in the middle of the messy kind of messiness of the middle, it can totally feel like it's a futile endeavor. But if you've put in the time and effort and you know the audience you're trying to target, you understand the change and what it means, you are using a whole range of different tools to try and support that change, then I feel like you can have confidence that you will get through the messy middle, so it won't be futile. So hang in there. That's right, exactly. Keep
We're
going.
at that point on a couple of projects, and at the moment it is feeling like, whoa.
Yeah.
But I think if you've done that groundwork,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And Peter Long is also agreeing. Be patient for results at times. I like that. That's good. Yep.
Perfect. Okay. Next up. Again, I guess this kind of leads on. So someone said, how do I write a grant application that ensures that follow-up on practice change is part of what gets funded, that it's not just you just do the stuff and then move on to the next project, that follow-up stuff is part of what I get to do?
Yeah. And Chrissy, I really think it builds on what John James covered in Extension Chat 1 and what Jeff Coots covered last week. It's that setting up for success, planning out your project, you know, writing out the monitoring and evaluation plan, and you're actually monitoring the project team as well as the project, as Jeff talked about last week. So you're able to gather all of that data, and so that when you go to the next grant application, you've actually got some information to help you, and you've got some stuff that you know works, or actually no, that didn't work and I know why, and so that's why I'm not going to do it. So yeah, go back and have a listen, and if you're kind of wondering, listen to John and Jeff's wisdom, and yeah, put it all into practice.
Beautiful. Okay, so the next one, how do I give people confidence to take their foot off first base? So I love this question, because it's kind of, how do you get people motivated to make change when they might not even think that it's necessary? And so one of the things that I'm doing at the moment is working on an IT project and working with the change management team. And it's quite a different approach than I've seen before. I don't know if anyone else has done kind of IT change management. It's a very kind of structured approach, but there's a whole lot of stuff that we can swipe from it. And one of the bits that I have seen and really loved is this this kind of model about getting people ready for change. They have to be ready and willing and able. And sometimes what we actually are working on is the ready and willing stuff. And then the able stuff is almost kind of comes at the end to say, have we got the tools and the skills to be able to do this thing? But getting people recognizing that they actually need to do something different, or that it's urgent, or that there's an opportunity there if they do things differently, is kind of, you know, that's actually 2/3 of the job. And the bits where you're saying, okay, this is how you do it, is kind of the easy stuff. So I think if we're doing a good job at the ready and willing, then when we're ready to go on the able stuff, that's a piece of cake. So yeah, that was kind of what I thought about that bit. So Olivia, this one I'm going to throw to you. How can I deliver events to best ensure good practices are adopted?
Rightio. this wasn't, wasn't sure about this question actually. So this is in regards to keeping audiences engaged. Was this in regards to that?
Yeah.
Yes. So keeping audiences engaged, we want to be able to keep them, like farmers, we all know they're used to being on their feet all the time. They're used to being active. So when you put them in a classroom situation, they can tune off really easy. So it's trying to keep their momentum going. And we've learned some really cool tools from the facilitated training through the Red Meat Profit Partnership and the Action Network. So it's keeping them awake, reigniting them, and ways we can do that. I'll share a few of my favorites. So one of my favorites is actually during a session like we are now, doing a like, wish, wonder session. So simply putting like, wish, wonder, maybe post-it notes or around the wall. What do you like about the particular topic? What do you wish and what do you wonder? And that can give you some real good speaking topics to go from that as well. A similar one is the think, pair, share. So how that works is between you. So you get people to pair up and have before you do that, you sort of go, right, have a think about this question, and then you pair up, you share your thoughts on it, and then you share them with the wider group. So you might go back into the group of 5, or you might go into a wider group from that as well. Another one can be really good for icebreakers as well, or but just during the day to be able to help them share their stories. It might be as simply as putting a piece of string on the ground, or even having a wall going from the venue where we are now, who travelled the furthest today, or who's the closest, and getting them to be able to actually stand in that line. They've got to interact with each other. It gets them up and about, gets that blood flowing again. And nothing quite gets your attention like when a facilitator stands at the front of the room, goes, pair up, now stare into each other's eyes and see who has the darkest eyes. And you're all cringing right now, but you all do it and you have a laugh and you go, what? And then the person with the darkest eyes, you now need to move to all your stuff, and you're going to move to the table on your left, and you get them to move places, and they all have a good laugh about it at the same time, but you've got their attention again. They're awake. They're listening. So that, and having some spaces for breakouts, and like we do online, being able to keep them up and moving is really good. So that's probably, what I'd suggest.
So Olivia, do you guys have like a kind of go-to, have you got a list of these kind of ideas that you have with you to go, it's not going so great, what can I do?
Oh, I think Laura can probably explain that one a wee bit.
Yes, we do, Chrissy. So it's just a Word document that our team has, that we've just got slapped in our diaries or notepads that we can take along to events. And it's more for those ad hoc times. So you might have your perfect run sheet with these practices in your perfect run sheet. However, you're feeling the crowd, feeling the audience, and things are either slipping downhill, or you need to rein them in, or you need to get them up and moving, and it's trying to pick what one out of your toolbox is the right one. So we've got a bit of a Word document. It's just a rough bullet pointed list of what we can do and why you would do them and when, on an ad hoc basis.
Awesome. And I think next week Jeanette Long's going to cover heaps of these kind of things, because her session's all about facilitating. So I'm expecting to learn some great stuff there. Thanks, guys. Okay, and I think this might be our last question. How can I engage the non-engaged?
Yeah, it's a great question as well, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit, and maybe there were some good ideas that came out of the breakout rooms as well, Chrissy, out of hopefully captured in Slido, because I know we talked about it a little bit in the breakout room that I was in. The key here is figuring out who the non-engaged, the ones that you haven't engaged with yet, who do they talk to, and engage with the people they talk to. So for Action Network, it was figuring out who are the connectors, who are the people that we could connect with, that farmers connect with, and building it up from there, which sounds kind of straightforward, except that it's a little bit harder to figure some of that out some of the time, but give it a go and try. And I think, Laura, you've got a really cool example. So.
Yeah, well, I'm a big fan of collaboration. There's always going to be an audience that you don't engage with, but they will be engaging with someone. So an example that we have is we do a lot at Beef and Lamb in the environmental space. A lot of my farmers are fine wool farmers and probably aren't so active in the meat industry. However, we've still got a lot to offer them. And they're still paying levies, so we've still got to offer them services. So I partner up with their wool supplier. They organise, they run, they advertise, they get along their clients, and I come along with the workshop and the information to support that event. So good collaboration. We're still getting our non-engaged audience, but they're still engaged, but they secretly don't know it.
Ah, sounds awesome. Okay, now we are going to spend just a couple of minutes before we finish up, because I think there's a lot of stuff that we've heard about today that is awesome and lots of really cool ideas. So what I want you to do is just spend a couple of minutes thinking about what am I going to do? I've heard something today that just really rang a bell. What am I going to do with that? What is the work that I'm going to start when I hang up from this call today, or arrive at work tomorrow morning? It might be testing some ideas, or trying a new technique, or finding somebody to mentor you. What is that work? So I'd encourage you to, if you want to turn off your camera and make sure you're on mute, spend just about 3 minutes working on that, and then once you've kind of done the work, put your camera back on, and then we've just got a little bit more to do before we finish up. So we'll just give you a couple of minutes. Okay, so we've had some cool stuff come through in the chat box. What we're going to do now to finish up is a couple of polls, because we all know that evaluation is really important. We want to make sure that we do some evaluation before we finish. So first question, and if you were at Jeff and Denise's session last week, you'll recognise this question. How useful or valuable was this chat for you? So 1 is not at all, 10 is, oh my God, you guys are amazing and we should be paying 10 times more for this. So if you've jumped out of Slido, just remember that the code is chat if it's asking you for that. Fantastic. We're getting some great numbers here. And I guess remembering that we had lots of people in the group today who've been in Extension for a long time. You know, even if you've just picked up a couple of little tips or ideas, that's fantastic. Super happy. Okay. And our final question, what new extension method are you going to try? So we asked you what your go-to was in that first breakout group. What are you going to have a go at? You know, I need to find and something apart from just throwing little chocolate bars at people. What are you going to have a go at? Oh, someone said using Slido. Excellent. Instagram stalking. A lot of people saying they're going to have a go at using the 7 touch points. I think that's a really good one. Just that repetition. And I think, you know, Simon Sankey's got this this acronym of, you know, as extensionists, we need to swipe. So steal with integrity and pride from everywhere. That's exactly what we're doing, right? Why recreate a great idea when someone else has already done it? Okay, fantastic ideas there. I'm pretty sure that Instagram 7 touch points and Slido are our winners today, but we'll collate all that up and send it out to you. Thanks everybody so much for joining us today. It's been really fun to have you all along. Hopefully you've got something really interesting out of the session today. And thanks so much to our presenters, Denise, Olivia and Laura. You guys
and
are
Chrissy,
amazing.
and yourself.
And me.
And yourself.
We're all amazing. Now, before we finish, I'm just going to do a quick reminder about the final extension chat, which is this time next week. And so Jeanette are going to be talking to us about facilitating. So if you are somebody that does that or wants to do that or doesn't even know what facilitating is, then you definitely need to be there. So registrations are still open. We would love to see you there. And that's it for us. Awesome. Have a great afternoon, guys. See you later.